Being born again. You've heard that phrase a million times, right? It's one of the cornerstones of modern Christianity. But what if I told you its original meaning had almost nothing to do with the future spiritual experience and everything to do with an ancient, physical, and kind of messy ritual? Let's get into it. So our whole investigation starts with this really strange moment. Jesus tells Nicodemus, who is basically the top Bible scholar of his day, that he has to be born again. And Nicodemus is just stumped. But the weirdest part? Jesus is surprised that he's confused. Why? I mean, if this was some brand new idea, you think Jesus would expect a few questions, right? And here's the thing. The key to unlocking this whole mystery isn't found in the New Testament. No, the answer was already there, hidden in plain sight in the Old Testament scriptures, the very text that Nicodemus had spent his entire life mastering. Now, this wasn't just some casual chat. We're talking about a secret, late-night meeting between Jesus and a member of the religious elite. So when Jesus brings up being born again, he's not teaching a new doctrine. He's actually pointing to something he fully expects this expert, this teacher of Israel, to already get. And this quote right here, this is the smoking gun. This isn't just a simple question. It's a challenge. Jesus is basically saying, come on, Nicodemus, this is your field. You of all people should know this stuff. This tells us that being born again wasn't just an idea. It had to be something you could see, something you could know. So where do we start looking for answers? Well, our investigation takes us right to the heart of ancient Jewish worship, the temple. And our first piece of evidence is a massive, holy, and surprisingly, grimy curtain. Okay, so this wasn't just any old piece of fabric. The veil was the barrier between the holy place and the most holy place, which was literally considered God's throne room on earth. To go past it was to enter the direct presence of God. And this is absolutely crucial. The book of Hebrews later tells us that this veil was a direct symbol of Jesus' own physical body. So you can forget any image you might have of a spotless, pristine, white curtain. It's not true. The veil was, in reality, a public ledger of the people's sin. Every single time a priest made an offering for sin or for cleansing, like for a leper, he would flick blood and oil onto the veil. It was constantly being marked. And this wasn't just some custom they made up. It was the law, spelled out right there in Leviticus. So just imagine, day after day, year after year, this curtain is collecting more and more stains. A physical, layered record of the nation's sin, written in blood directly onto the symbol of the Messiah's body. So the big takeaway here is that sin wasn't some abstract concept. It was visible. It was tangible. Any priest working in the holy place would see this constant, grim, bloody reminder of the nation's spiritual debt. And it was all pointing toward the one who would eventually pay that debt. Okay, so we have this blood-stained curtain. What happens next? Well, it all comes to a head on the single most important day of the Jewish year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. This was the one and only day that one single person, the high priest, was allowed to go behind that curtain. So once a year, the high priest goes into the presence of God to make things right for the entire nation. He's surrounded by incense. He's sprinkling blood. But look at that last step. He doesn't just stroll out like he owns the place. The only way out was to get on the ground and crawl out underneath the curtain. And we know these details aren't just speculation. The first-century historian Flavius Josephus, who actually came from a priestly family, described this. He tells us blood was sprinkled everywhere, the ceiling, the floor, the altar. It would have been an overwhelming sensory experience. This is theology in action, people. To come back out from the presence of God, the most powerful religious leader in Israel had to completely humble himself. He had to crawl on his hands and knees, with his body literally passing through all the smeared blood and oil of the nation's sin. So let's put the pieces together. We have a blood-stained curtain that symbolizes a body. We have the high priest going into God's presence and then coming back out by crawling through that symbolic body. Is the picture starting to come into focus for you? This is it. This is the new birth that Nicodemus should have known. Just think about it. The high priest emerges crawling, helpless, covered in the blood and oil from the veil, and smelling strongly of the holy incense. He is coming out of a narrow passage, looking, feeling, and smelling remarkably like a newborn baby emerging from the birth canal. You see, this wasn't some floaty spiritual metaphor. It was a physical drama that played out every single year. All the priests, including Nicodemus, would have seen their leader be symbolically reborn, out of the presence of God, cleansed and renewed for another year. That was the born-again experience of the Old Testament. And this wasn't just a one-off thing either. If you start looking for it, this theme of being cleansed and made new, like a little kid, is echoed all over the scriptures that Nicodemus would have known by heart. I mean, think about Naaman the Syrian. He's cleansed of leprosy, a symbol of sin, and the Bible says his skin becomes like the skin of a little child. Or the really complicated story of Tamar's twins, which ancient scholars saw as a picture of death and resurrection right at the moment of birth. And then you have the ritual for cleansing a leper. One bird is killed, another is dipped in its blood, and then set free, a powerful living picture of being born again out of death. The pattern was everywhere. So being born again wasn't some brand new spiritual concept Jesus just invented. It was the ultimate fulfillment of a deeply physical, deeply symbolic picture that had been performed for centuries. It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we've been missing the original, physical meaning of an idea this big, what other powerful symbols are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to see them?